Hi everyone, I'm Amy and I grow food in southwestern Ontario in Canada. I grow food and I also grow native plants. I just love gardening. But this time of year, our gardens are covered in snow, so we have to pivot as food growers and start growing food inside. For me, that means mushrooms and microgreens. However, microgreens and sprouts both make great salads in the wintertime, and one is actually a lot easier or simpler, more straightforward to grow. I'm going to show you the main differences between sprouts and microgreens today, including differences in how they grow. First, to understand the difference between sprouts and microgreens and how they grow and when you harvest them, let's do a quick mini botany lesson. Inside the hard outer seed coating, there is an embryo. That's going to be the baby plant. And there's also a food source. That's also called the endosperm. When the seed absorbs water, the water activates enzymes that start converting stored starches inside the seed to sugars that are going to fuel its growth. A little embryonic root emerges first, whose job it is to anchor that baby plant in the soil and to start absorbing water and nutrients. And then a little shoot starts to grow toward the light. The first little leaves you see on a freshly sprouted baby plant are called cotyledons, also known as seed leaves. These are going to immediately start photosynthesizing to supplement the nutrition remaining in the seed. And then after a few days, the seedling will have enough energy to grow its first true leaves. These are the leaves that actually look like the mature leaf of the plant. Here's a bowl of sprouts that we just finished sprouting. They may also look like this, a little bit bigger. Those sprouts are just germinated seeds grown in a clean container with no inputs besides water. You just rinse and drain, and that water causes these little seeds to sprout. That's literally it. And you typically harvest them anywhere from 3 to 7 days after you start wetting those seeds. They'll have their first little cotyledons. Let's find one here. They'll have their first little cotyledons and a little root. And that's typically the stage at which you will start eating and harvesting and eating sprouts. Now, microgreens. Microgreens are like sprouts, except they have taken up a lot more nutrients. They've gone beyond what was in their little seed, and they're growing nice lush leaves, and pretty soon these are going to start forming their first true leaves. And microgreens are typically grown in a soil mix, although I'll get into that later. You can grow them in different things. So they grow for longer, and you get a different nutrient profile when you're eating microgreens. And typically you just cut them off at the base of the stem, so you're not eating the seed or the root with microgreens, just the stem and the leaves. These make a really great go-to salad, whereas sprouts you may be more likely to just dump on a sandwich.
Here's how to grow sprouts. You're going to need seeds that are marketed for sprouting, a clean jar or another type of sprouting container or system that you can buy. I just use a mason jar. And a mesh lid. You can also use clean cheesecloth or another fine strainer for this. And then you'll need water. Dechlorinated water is technically best for sprouting seeds, but I have never had an issue using my municipal water, and it's both extremely hard and heavily chlorinated. Seeds want to grow, and most are pretty resilient. So you're going to start by putting seeds, usually 1 to 2 tablespoons, in a smallish jar, and then you're going to soak them. You can soak for 6 hours or you can soak them overnight. And then when they're done that soaking phase, just drain the water off, add more water, rinse them, and then drain again. And you're going to do this rinsing and draining on repeat for a couple of days. Some seeds only take 2 to 3 days to sprout and be ready to eat. Others can take up to 7. So just follow along on the seed packet or use your eyes and look at the sprouts and know when they're going to be ready enough for you to eat. But do that rinsing and draining at least once a day, sometimes twice a day if you have a chance, to keep the seeds nice and moist, but also refreshed and clean. Here's how to grow microgreens. You're going to need seeds. You're going to need a shallow tray, and these are also often marketed for microgreens, just the right depth of tray to hold the soil that you need. And these trays are often double layered. So there's one with excellent drainage and then one that you nest that into that will hold your water. You're also going to need a growing medium like soil or a cocoa coir mat. You actually don't need a growing medium, and I'll show that a little bit later. You can grow them hydroponically or just in water. So you're going to start by filling your tray with the growth medium. That's your soil or your cocoa coir or whatever. And then you're going to scatter the seeds evenly across it. Seed packets will tell you approximately how many tablespoons you need for a given surface area. And you can definitely mix different varieties of seeds for your microgreens into one tray. Just make sure that they are all supposed to be ready to harvest in the same amount of time, for obvious reasons. You don't want some that are burgeoning with their leaves and ready to go, and others that are just starting to germinate. Some people will recommend that you keep your microgreens covered before they germinate because seeds like dark to germinate, especially the bigger seeds. I never had a problem with not covering them. They all end up germinating in the end. But another reason to cover your microgreens is to help them grow tall because you end up getting more crunchy stem and less big bushy leaves. This is kind of the vibe for a lot of microgreens. So as soon as you take the opaque cover off of your microgreen tray and they're exposed to light, they're going to start photosynthesizing and putting on a lot more leaf growth. And then it just turns into sort of a different textured microgreen. You're going to want to water them daily or every other day. Just make sure that the soil or whatever growing medium stays moist, and then you'll be ready to harvest in about 7 to 14 days, depending on the variety. Now let's talk about growing microgreens without soil. The tray shown here is one that's designed for hydroponic microgreen growing. It's a super cheap tray. I got a set of 4. You scatter the seeds on this mesh tray, and then the roots go down into the tray below where you can either add plain water or you can add nutrients to the water. Nutrients are only needed if you want to grow bigger, less microgreens. So remember the mini botany lesson from the beginning of the video. Seeds have their own built-in food source that gets them to a certain point in growth before they actually require external sources of nutrients. So if you want to grow traditional microgreens that are just stems and cotyledons, you can just use water in a unit like this with no growth medium, no nutrients added. Super cheap. If you want to grow heftier microgreens like pea shoots or things like chard or choys that are more like baby salad greens when they're finished, then you can add water-soluble fertilizer to the water or just grow them on soil. If you do add nutrients and grow hydroponically, be aware that doing so without precision measuring can be risky to your health. Microgreens can accumulate a lot of nitrates from fertilizer, and that can lead you to ingesting too much nitrates. So you just have to know what you're doing if you're going to grow microgreens with water-soluble fertilizers.
Okay, so let's go over the key differences again now that you know how to grow each of them. With sprouts, grown with just water, and you typically harvest them within 3 to 7 days. You're eating the stem, the seed, the root, and the leaves. And the nutrient profile is unique from microgreens. These are higher in amino acids, pectins, and sugars. Microgreens are grown in some sort of medium if you want to get them nice and leafy. So you can either use soil or you can add fertilized water, although you can also grow them in just water. The point is you let them grow for a bit longer, and you're typically only eating the stems and the leaves. You can grow the same varieties of plants as microgreens and sprouts, but the difference in how long they grow leads to a different nutrient profile. So microgreens end up being higher in vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants, whereas the sprouts have more pectins and sugars. I encourage you to try growing either of these. Microgreens, maybe a little bit more involved, you need a titch more equipment, or sprouts, super simple to grow. Just if you do that, make sure that you're buying seeds that are marketed for sprouting. There's a little added layer of safety in there if they're either inspected or cleaned properly to make sure they're clean seeds. If you grow microgreens, please don't miss out on the opportunity to run your fingers through lush green growing leaves in the middle of winter. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll come grow with us.